The first laugh came from the back of the group. It was quiet, the kind of laugh men produce when they want it heard but don't want to be identified as the one who made it. Then a second one, closer. Then Petty Officer First Class Derek Rourke, who had never once in 11 years of service made a sound without calculating exactly who would hear it, turned to the man beside him and said something in a low voice. And the man beside him smiled and looked at the ground the way people look at the ground when they are enjoying something they believe they can afford to enjoy. The woman at the firing line did not react. She was prone on the concrete, eye to the scope, left hand steady under the fore end, breathing in a pattern so slow it was almost invisible from where the group stood. The target was a standard IPSC silhouette, and it was not at a standard distance. Chief Warrant Officer Paul Dietrich had said it himself that morning, personally because he had wanted to be certain, had walked the range with a measuring wheel and confirmed the number twice and written it on the whiteboard in red marker so there would be no question afterward about what the number was. 2,980 meters. Across the valley, uphill angle, 12 degrees, wind from the northwest at 16 knots gusting to 22, temperature dropping, the kind of shot that existed in the record books because it had been attempted by people with years of dedicated long-range work and equipment that cost more than most people's cars, and even then the record books were thin. She had asked for 2 rounds. Dietrich had looked at her when she said that. He had looked at her the way you look at a statement that doesn't quite parse. Not offensive, not provocative, just structurally incorrect. You do not ask for 2 rounds for a shot at 2,980 meters. You ask for a confirmed firing position, a dedicated spotter, a full atmospheric workup, and however many rounds the range will permit because you are going to need them. You do not ask for 2. 2, she had said again, when he didn't respond. Not emphatic, just confirming. He had given her 2 rounds. Before we go any further, if this story already has you, hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very last word. Drop a comment below telling me what city you are watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Sarah Holt, and she had arrived at SEAL Team 7's advanced marksmanship evaluation, not because she had requested it and not because she had been assigned to it, but because a single sentence in a memo written by a rear admiral named Castillo had redirected her from a scheduled debrief in San Diego to this range in the Nevada high desert, with 24 hours notice and no further explanation. The memo said, "Send Holt to the AM Eve." It did not say why. It did not describe her background or her qualifications or the specific thing that had caused Admiral Castillo to write her name in that particular blank on that particular form. What it did not say was that Sarah Holt held a record that did not appear in any document accessible to the men currently standing at the back of Range 7 with their arms folded, watching her breathe. She had arrived at 0700 in a rental car, alone, in civilian clothes, carrying a rifle case that Rourke had clocked immediately. A .50 caliber platform, suppressed, custom configuration, the kind of case that costs money and says something about its owner, if you know how to read it. He had looked at the case and then at her, and made his first assessment in under 4 seconds, and the assessment had informed every subsequent interaction, including the comment he had made to the man beside him 2 minutes ago at the firing line. She was 36, medium height. She wore her hair back and her face gave nothing away, not in the way of someone performing composure, but in the way of someone for whom composure was simply the baseline, the resting state, the condition she had occupied for long enough that anything else felt like noise. She had checked in with range control, signed the documentation, made 2 brief requests, the target placement and the round count, and then gone to the line and gone prone and begun her preparation, which involved no conversation with anyone present. Dietrich had run the AMEV for 3 years. He had seen shooters at every level come through this range. He had seen men with genuine skill and men who believed they had genuine skill, which was not the same thing. And he had developed over 3 years a fairly reliable instinct for which category a person fell into within the first few minutes of watching them settle into position. He was watching Sarah Holt settle into position now, and his instinct was producing an answer he was not entirely ready to accept, because accepting it required him to override the assessment he had made 45 seconds after she arrived, and that assessment had felt solid at the time. He watched her breathing. He watched the way her body had become. In the 5 minutes since she went prone, something that was almost indistinguishable from the concrete beneath her, still in a way that was not passive, the stillness of something fully loaded and waiting. He watched her left hand under the friend, and the angle of her right elbow and the specific geometry of her eye to the scope, and he started doing arithmetic he had not expected to be doing. Rourke was still talking. Dietrich could hear him without making out the words, a low commentary-style murmur that required an audience and had one. 3 of the other evaluators were listening. One of them, Senior Chief Walsh, was not. Walsh had been in long-range precision work for 14 years and had watched a lot of people go prone on a lot of ranges, and he was watching Sarah Holt with an expression that was quiet and undivided. She had not asked for a spotter. That was the detail that had generated the first laugh. You do not shoot at 2,980 meters without a spotter. A spotter calls wind, reads mirage, tracks impact, gives corrections. A solo attempt at that distance was either an act of profound arrogance or an act of profound confidence. And the men at the back of Range 7 had arrived at their interpretation quickly and without much deliberation. Walsh had not laughed. Sarah's preparation had taken 11 minutes. She had used a Kestrel unit for atmospheric data, wind speed, direction, density altitude, temperature, and had worked her firing solution on a small laminated card she produced from her shirt pocket, running the numbers twice with a pencil, making one correction and returning the card to her pocket. She had made no adjustment requests. She had asked for no assistance. She had chambered her first round, settled her cheek back to the stock, and gone still. The range went quiet in the particular way that ranges go quiet when something is about to happen that everyone present understands is either going to be remarkable or it is going to fail conspicuously. And both outcomes are interesting. Sarah exhaled. Half a breath out, she stopped. Her finger was on the trigger, but not moving. She was reading something. The wind, the mirage off the valley floor, a calculation running continuously in the part of her brain that had been doing this for 15 years and had developed a relationship with distance and atmosphere that operated below the level of conscious thought. That felt less like arithmetic and more like listening. She was listening to the valley. She was waiting for the valley to tell her something she already mostly knew and needed confirmed. It told her. She pressed the trigger. The Barrett spoke once. A deep, suppressed concussion that rolled out across the valley and came back as a faint echo. 2.9 seconds passed. The sound of a bullet traveling 2,980 meters through cold Nevada air and arriving at its destination does not carry back to the shooter. What carries back is a different kind of information. The spotter's call, if there is a spotter, or in this case, the range camera system Dietrich had running on the target, because he ran cameras on every AMIV shot, regardless of the shooter. The camera showed the hit, center mass, 2 centimeters left of the geometric center of the silhouette, which at 2,980 meters and 16 knots of variable wind was not a miss. It was a result that required a moment to fully process, because processing it correctly meant revising several things simultaneously, and human brains resist simultaneous revision. Nobody laughed. Dietrich was looking at his monitor. Walsh was looking at the target camera feed, and his expression had not changed, but something behind his eyes had. Rourke had stopped talking. The man beside Rourke was looking at the range floor. Sarah did not move. She did not look back at the group. She did not acknowledge the shot in any way. She was still prone, still eyed a scope, and her right hand was moving with the unhurried precision of someone performing a practice sequence, working the bolt, chambering the second round, resettling. She's going again, someone said. She was already going. The second shot followed the first by 47 seconds. Not because she needed 47 seconds to recover or recalibrate. She needed the valley wind to complete a gust cycle she had identified in her atmospheric data. A 7-second window of reduced velocity that opened, predictably, every 40 to 50 seconds in this terrain. She had identified it before the first shot. She had planned for it. She had known when she asked for 2 rounds exactly what she was going to do with both of them. The Barrett spoke again. 2.9 seconds. The camera? The second hit landed 8 millimeters above the first. 2 rounds, 2,980 meters. No spotter, no corrections between shots. The grouping, at that distance, was a result that Dietrich would later describe in his range report, using the word extraordinary twice and then delete it both times, because the word felt insufficient, and he could not immediately locate a word that felt sufficient, so he described it in numbers instead, and let the numbers say what words were struggling to reach. The range was silent for a long moment. Sarah ejected the second casing, set the rifle on safe, and rose from the prone in one controlled movement. She brushed the concrete dust from her shirt. She picked up the rifle case, packed the weapon with the same quiet efficiency she had unpacked it, and snapped the latches closed. She turned around. Rourke was looking at her. His arms were no longer folded. He was standing with his weight forward slightly, the posture of a man who has just been required to update his understanding of a situation and is still in the process of doing it. His expression was not embarrassed. Men like Rourke did not wear embarrassment legibly, but it was changed. She could see the change. She walked past him to where Dietrich was standing at the monitor. She looked at the camera feed. She looked at the two hits, the grouping, the centimeter measurements the system had auto-generated. She looked at it the way a craftsperson looks at finished work, not with pride, not with relief, just checking, confirming that what she had set out to do was what had been done. "Clean," she said. Dietrich looked at her. He said, "Lieutenant Commander, I need to ask." He paused. The 2-round request. "You knew." She looked at him. "I knew the conditions. Before you arrived, I requested the meteorological data for this grid 3 days ago." A pause. "The wind cycle opens every 40 to 50 seconds between 1,000 and 1,400 hours in this terrain. It's in the topography. You just need the patience to wait for it." Dietrich nodded slowly. He looked at the screen again. Then he looked at her and said, "There's a record on file for this range. Distance." She waited. "You're not on the board," he said. "I know," she said. He held her gaze. "You've shot here before." It was not a question. She let it sit for a moment. "Different name on the form," she said. "Different evaluation context." She picked up her case. "The record stands." "It doesn't need my name on it to stand." She walked to the range exit. Walsh fell into step beside her, not to escort her, just to walk the same direction, and she allowed it, and they walked for a moment without speaking. Then Walsh said, "The comment." "Rourke." She glanced at him. "It was before the shot," he said. "He didn't know." "Nobody knew," she said. "That's the point," he nodded. They walked. After a moment he said, "He knows now." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She pushed the range door open and walked out into the cold Nevada afternoon, and the door swung shut behind her. And the conversation was over, and the record that didn't have her name on it was still standing across the valley at 2,980 meters. And the camera footage was saved to a drive in Dietrich's range office, and none of that required her to say anything further about any of it. In the parking lot, she put the rifle case in the trunk of the rental car and stood for a moment in the cold with her hands in her jacket pockets. The valley was visible from here, the long drop of terrain, the target position invisible at this distance, the air above the valley floor still carrying the faint shimmer of mirage, even in November. She looked at it the way she always looked at range terrain after a session, quietly taking the geometry of it apart and putting it back. The habit of a mind that had spent 15 years learning to read the space between a trigger press and a target. 2 rounds, 2 hits, no corrections, no spotter, no second attempt needed. She got in the car and drove north. There are people who require a room's permission to take up space in it. They arrive and they wait. For the introduction, for the acknowledgement, for the moment when the room decides they are allowed to be what they are. And there are others who walk in with a rifle case and a 2-round request and the quiet certainty of someone who has already done the math and found the wind and is simply waiting for the right moment in the gust cycle. The laugh from the back of the group was not cruelty. It was ignorance, which is a more ordinary thing and more forgivable and correctable. It was corrected in 2 shots and 47 seconds. The correction required no words from her. It required only that she do what she had already done, in different places, under different names, at distances that no one in that room had thought to ask her about. The record stood at 2,980 meters. It stood without her name on it. It didn't need her name on it. It only needed to be true.